Hello, episode 5 of FPL Affairs, the podcast that discusses the 9-month-long love affair with FPL, including the ins and outs that keep us awake at night. In tonight's show, we discuss Haaland, Saints, or a sinner, our long-term plans, looking at fixture swings at Gameweek 12, what we planned for this weekend, short-term, going into Gameweek 9, as well as any price changes and catching up with the longevity challenge. Without further ado, let's get cracking.
And there's Mo Salah. There goes Haaland. He's on his way again. He's hungry. He's scored. Ice cold precision from Palmer. Kayo Saka. That is a diamond of a goal.
Hello and welcome to our latest episode with me, Matt, aka FPL Affairs The Veteran, joined today with our wonderful Master Jack. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. You?
Yeah, not too bad. Tired. Going briefly off topic, had COVID and flu jabs. I'm not having those done in the same appointment. I thought for convenience I'll do it, and flu one was fine. Thankfully, I went for the COVID one in the weaker arm, and that's just been a flop since then. A bit like my team, a bit like my team this week. So sooner we get that out the way, the better, in a way. Yeah. So right, let's look at our teams.
Here we go. The fun starts.
Right, episode 5: Haaland, Saints or sinners?
Bloody Saints.
Yeah, from a Southampton fan, we'll get that input. Okay, do you want to go through your team first?
Yes, mate, yeah. Couple of last-minute changes for me. Saka to Son, based on, obviously, his doubts. There was I said in last week's video and all week last week I planned to roll. If there was news that Saka wasn't going to start, then Son for me would probably be what I would do, and I did because of the doubts, also because of the fixtures. I thought even if he does play, there is a tough run of games coming up, and Son has a better, run of fixtures. So thought it was probably just the best move. Did it. Obviously, was happy with his points. Then even more happy with the points that got added. Then a little bit disappointed with the points that got taken away. But all in all, it's 8 points more than what Saka would have got. So yeah, good move. Good fixtures coming up. Happy with that. The other last minute move I did was a bad one, which was a couple of minutes before the deadline. Did Smith Rowe to Rodgers, so benched Rodgers and played Smith Rowe. Lost 5 points there. Again, these things happen. I'm okay with it. Happy with Mikalenko on wildcard. Played him, obviously wildcarded him in. I've left him sat on the bench for a couple of games. Foden coming on and getting an assist with one of the most controversial sort of refereeing decisions of the weekend, but did me a world of good. Chris Wood, I mean, the New Zealand Haaland basically just seems to keep going, keeps producing. Obviously, we were supposed to go blank goal. Missed the first half because I was attempting to play football myself, but watched the highlights. He probably could have scored more from what I saw. A couple of good chances in the first half, which were typical Chris Wood chances between the posts, you know what I mean, headers, edge of the 6-yard box stuff that he normally puts away, and he ends up scoring a volley that wasn't necessarily well hit and a bit of a goalkeeping error from Henderson. So that was a big swing because a lot of people have Henderson. So for him to lose his clean sheet and Palace to lose their clean sheet and for Chris Wood to get the goal was good. More Haaland disappointment, which I'm sure we'll touch on later
Yeah.
on in the video. I'm not the
Yeah,
only
for
one
sure.
going through that at the moment. And Vardiol, again, a couple of weeks ago, did just before the international break, did Trent to Ait Nouri, Rico Lewis to Vardiol, and Luis Diaz to Foden. Ait Nouri got me 9. Foden didn't get me anything, and neither did Vardiol, and obviously Rico Lewis got an assist this week. Other way round, Luis Diaz comes off the bench for 1, Foden comes off the bench and gets 4.
Yeah.
Vardiol gets the 10, Rico Lewis gets the blank. Obviously, Ait Nouri was always planned to be on my bench, so I played Mikalenko. So all in all, I'm quite happy with that move. Things. It was a good week, genuinely a good week. I was in the top 100k before
Yeah.
Son's
Yeah.
assist got taken off,
Yeah.
and he obviously
Do you want
lost
to
a
just read?
bonus point as well.
Do you want to just quickly
Um,
read out your team?
Yeah, for those those not watching, Flecken 4, obviously some good saves there. Gabriel 1, Vardiol 10, Mikalenko 7, Embuemo 2, Foden 4, Son 8, Smith Rowe 1, Havertz 2, Woods 7, Haaland captain 4.
Which
So yeah,
gave you wonderful 50.
50. Yeah, 50 was good. I was okay with 50. Obviously, it was 54 before Son's points got taken away, which, like I said, put me in the top 100k. I think I was something like 83, 84k. So to then end up sort of checking live FPL on Monday, and then during the game, because obviously Son's points weren't taken off
Yeah.
until after the Forest Palace game. So to be before the Salah couple of goals, I was like 40, 43, 44k, I think. And then obviously he did well. So fair play to those that are stuck with Salah. Dropped to 83k. Dropped to like 76k. No. Yeah, anyway. And then, so it just almost felt like a bit of a red arrow to finish on the 111k. But to start the week at 205, pretty much half my rank, give or take the odd point. Happy to be sat at 111k, really. Just the Rodgers thing's annoying because it was literally 2 minutes before the deadline and would have put me probably 60k, I reckon. But it's quite tight. It's quite tight up there. I think it's tight everywhere at the moment. I think ranks should be taken with a pinch of salt this early. I think there's we were talking about Kieran, who helps out with the pod, does a lot of research, and I sort of drew level with him with the Son points and everything, and then dropped 2 points behind him. And I think he's like 20k in front of me, and he's only 2 points. So there's a lot of people bunched in that top 150k. So just as quickly as it can go, it can go badly. So happy to just sort of stay consistent with a nice green. Looking forward to next week. How about you? How'd you get on?
Well, as I said, just like my jab and arm flopping, the team was as well. There's your green arrow.
Nice to see. Always good to see one of them.
Yep. Curtains looking at mine, really. Should be drawn the other way. Close the curtain on my team. But bit of a running theme for me at the moment, where it seems to be each week I've either got a small green arrow or a small red-ish.
Yeah, like I said, I think
largely,
points are tight at the moment. Do you know what I mean? Points are
largely,
tight.
and a lot of those are based on maybe one of the fixtures, like players I've got from one of the, like last week I had Saka's haul, and this being I've just noticed a typo on the screen. It's not Gameweek 7 review, it's Gameweek 8 review. But yeah, Gameweek 7 I had Saka's 16 points and the two Brentford boys of Mbermo and Collins. Everyone else blanked. This week game week 8, the Villa boys, Watkins and Rodgers, they did me okay. Everyone else blanked, including who I had on the bench. The auto sub Semenyo came in for Saka. So yeah, reading it out: Raya 1 point, Robertson 2 points, Gabriel 1, Fass 1, Semenyo 2, Rodgers 6, Mbeumo 2, Diaz 1, Watkins 8, Captain Haaland 4, and Delap, who was my sole free transfer for the injured João Pedro, got 2, which, adding that up, gave me a charming score of 30. And how that affected my rank, my safety score was 39, so I was 9 points behind that. My old rank was 2.5 million, and this game week of 30 points dropped me down about 600,000 places. So I'm now just over 3 million.
Tough week. But it's not too bad, is it? Do you know what I mean? It can swing. It can swing quite quickly. I mean, the safety score was 39. It's not a lot. I know it seems like a lot, but it's a clean sheet. Do you know what I mean? And then it's a clean sheet and an assist, or it's a goal and a couple of bonus. Like you can 9 points, although seems like a lot, it's one blank basically. So if obviously it depends on the ownership of the player. Like if Haaland was to have scored 2 goals, that probably wouldn't have changed anything, because I think his effective ownership was like 170%. But say someone like Robertson gets a clean sheet in that game,
or Delap scores,
or Delap scores, or do you know what I mean, or Semenyo, because obviously they were playing against 10 men. And I think his XG was quite high in that game, Semenyo. I think he had quite a lot of opportunity. So you're a return away. Do you see what I mean? I don't mind if I'm within 10 of my safety, I'm okay. It's when you're like miles away from it that you know you've had a really bad week. It's just frustrating. But again, we'll talk about your thoughts going forward this week. But I don't think it's a bad team. Do you know what I mean? Looking at it. Not a bad team.
That's also what's been frustrating about when looking at transfers and also building this one. How I got to it is there's not really a huge amount I would change. I think there's probably, out of the whole squad of 15, there's probably only 4 that I would change or consider changing.
I think you have to. I think it requires a bit of patience, though, doesn't it? Because I think, like Watkins, for example, I think he blanked last week, didn't he? And he hauled the week before, and he obviously scored this week. Rodgers is pretty similar to that. Luis Diaz, we all jumped on that train, and that train's gone stale. Same with Haaland. Delap again. Do you know what I mean? Robertson has had Liverpool have had the best defence of the league so far this season, with the most clean sheets, but he's been dropped unluckily in a few. Like I had Fass on my bench the other week and he got a clean sheet, and I think he got like 7, or he scored or something. Do you see what I mean? So
he was on my bench the same week.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is luck, and I think a lot of managers would see that score of 30 and knee jerk into a hit, which we've obviously, I think we discussed over chat over the last couple of days. But I think just as easily as that team scored 30 points, it could have scored 50 points. Do you see what I mean? There aren't like, you're not getting rid of Mbeumo, you're not getting rid of Haaland unless you're Mart and you're a maniac with Southampton coming up this weekend. Delap's a good budget option. Do you know what I mean? Like, Chris Wood's a good budget option. Jamie Vardy's a good budget option. Calvert-Lewin's a good budget option. Delap's a good budget option. I think with budget options, they're going to take it in turns, aren't they? Like, Calvert-Lewin's been a flop. Chris Wood's been a hit. Vardy's been in between. And Delap, unfortunately, over the last couple of weeks, has had a couple of blanks. Like, Smith Rowe was really good early on. Rodgers wasn't. Now it's switched. Do you know what I mean? The Arsenal defence is surprisingly all of a sudden at sea. Now you're staring at these after not keeping clean sheets in against Leicester, Southampton, and Bournemouth, which we all brought them in for. Now all of a sudden you're staring at like Chelsea and Liverpool, and I think there's another Newcastle. I think so. Now all of a sudden you're panicking about them. So there are good picks. I just think they're just going to require a bit of patience.
Yeah, and knowing Arsenal since they had clean sheets earlier in the season, what their performance is at Man City and at Tottenham, well, although they weren't necessarily clean sheets, but Gabriel scoring at both of those grounds, it's their defense is questionable, possibly. But then on the flip side, you know full well if you've got a double up, there's the potential of like they're playing Liverpool at the weekend. What's to say is that as they're at home, what's to say they don't win 1-0? Gabriel scores the goal.
Yeah, again though, that goes with double defence, doesn't it? It's either do you know what I mean, like destitute, or do you know what I mean? It's either a massive gain or a massive loss. It's either a total wipeout and one goal takes sort of like, let's say Ray gets clean sheet, Gabriel gets clean sheet. You're talking like 14 points there ish, with like maybe a bonus in there. Then all of a sudden, one goal, and that 14 goes to 4. Then they concede another one, and that 4 goes to 2. So all of a sudden, you see what I mean? Like the scope is massive, absolutely massive. I mean, I had Gabriel, I had Vardio, and I had Mikalenko, and I had Flecken. Like the only difference between your team and mine really is Mikalenko at 7 and Vardio at 10. There's 17 points. And then if we do Fleckens, who conceded 2 goals but he got save points, there's your 20 points. So it's just no rhyme or reason to it. You would have expected Robertson or Gabriel to walk away with maybe an attacking return like Vardio did, and you may have expected Wout Fast to walk away with a clean sheet at Southampton, and Mikalenko not at Ipswich. Do you see what I mean? So I think it's just you're just on the wrong side of that week, but I don't think it means it needs to rip it up.
Yeah, we'll go through short and long-term plans in a while. Right, but the main talking point really across the board is Haaland's hat-trick of blanks, which we'll speak through in a moment, because we'll just have a quick update of the longevity challenge, which will be quick as unfortunately Mart's not with us. But for those of you
maybe he's not with us based on how this went for him this week.
Possibly. But skimming over the rules, it's basically there's 3 teams. One is what Mart's team would have been had he have kept Haaland and Salah. Team B, what the money would have could have been spent for template wise, and the third one is the players he's actually brought in, and their weekly scores over a 5-game week period are totaled up. And if Team A wins, the apprentice does a forfeit. If the apprentice's team wins, then our Master Jack does a forfeit.
Ooh. Which brings us beautifully on to this week after Mark's dream start.
Yeah.
Well, as he was obviously a Liverpool fan as well, so watching Salah get a goal and assist must have been nice, but then with this in mind, not. So my team this week got, what's that, 22?
Yeah.
Versus his solid 8. So that puts me on 31 and 43, so that's a bit of a deficit there. Just still waiting on Haaland, but we'll get there. I think the middle team's interesting. The middle team, for me, the middle team's the one that I look at. Obviously, the forfeit's not ideal, but I'm quite interested in the middle team. because these are your premiums. These are your guys that people are changing Haaland and Salah to.
Yeah.
Again, similar to the Semenyo call a couple of game weeks ago when he had a couple of easy fixtures followed by really tough ones. The Palmer one for me, and we'll touch on this later on in the episode. There's a week I've got him coming in mind, and it's not in the immediate short term based on his fixtures. I also think that Saka his returns are gonna slow over the next few weeks, regardless of his injury. And the same with Trent. I think, like we said, this will be a really good table to see whether fixtures are important or form is important. And so far, I think we're somewhere in between. But I do expect with Saka, Palmer's and Trent's fixtures to worsen over the 9, 10 and 11. I think it'd be really interesting to see. Hopefully, regardless of the forfeit and obviously the bit of banter that Martin and I are having over this, I think it would be a good question to answer what sort of percentage, and what the sort of percentage we should put on fixtures and what percentage we should put on form when it comes to making decisions.
Yeah. So that's
this week.
Longevity challenge. But the main topic everywhere is Haaland, whether to keep or sell him, which was first mentioned when in the Facebook group asking people for topics they'd like us to discuss. Paul Brearley, if I pronounced it correctly, hopefully, suggested Haaland, which is a no-brainer, really, at the moment, about whether to keep him or to sell him. Before we look at the data, Jack, what's your first response to that?
I think it depends what sort of manager you are. There's no doubt in my mind that if he stays fit and healthy, he'll win the Golden Boot this year. Right? Not a single doubt. There's nobody there that could challenge him, in my opinion. Players like Palmer, players like Saka, players like Salah are obviously all going to get a good amount of goals. They're not going to. That for me will be like second, third, and fourth. Maybe an Ollie Watkins gets in. Do you know what I mean? But they'll be in the top 6 or 7.
Yeah.
I don't see how you can not have Haaland in your team. That's my opinion. I get that he's expensive. I get that the money can be spread elsewhere. But he, for me, is not necessarily essential. It's a word that's thrown around a lot. But with the fixtures that he's got coming up, he is, for me, essential to have with Southampton at home. He by far is the best player with the best fixture this week. So therefore the best captaincy option as far as I'm concerned. Now, everybody's a genius with hindsight. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So you can look at it and go, yep, but he blanked here and he blanked there and he blanked somewhere else. And I watched the Wolves game and they did shut him out the game. He didn't have much of a sniff. He did look better when Foden came on, I thought. He did look better when the game was more open. So I sort of came to a bit of a conclusion that although previous people, including the big guy on this podcast, has called him a tapping merchant in the past, I actually think he's better in a game where it's more open and there's more space, definitely. Because he does get crowded out of things. He does get man marked, and if Wolves, for example, are got 11 men behind the ball, it feels like 15 when you're looking at the telly and they're all camped in their own box. He is going to struggle. Craig Dawson obviously did a right job on him. Again, I just think that Southampton, however, being my team, we're so naive defensively. He will score this weekend. I'd put everything on it. I would genuinely be staggered if he didn't. And if anybody's thinking of selling him before Southampton at home, don't do it. There's nobody else this week that they can bring in. It's not like Salah's got Ipswich at home. Do you know what I mean? Or Palmer's got Wolves at home. There's nobody else that you would bring in that you could help spend the money on. For me, maybe a Son, but he's not travelled midweek to the European game, so is he going to be fit to start? I'm worried about that. I think Ange came out and said he was never planned to go anyway, but he did feel something. But there's no other premium player that you can spend the money on that justifies selling them this week to me. None at all. Certainly don't do it for a hit, because also if you've got one free transfer and you sell Haaland, you're going to have money to spend.
Yeah.
And there's not many managers that are just going to sit on, I don't know, 6 million for a week. You're going to spend it somewhere else to try and chase the points that you're risking losing by selling Haaland. So now all of a sudden you're selling Haaland and taking a hit. So, it makes no sense to me. Long story short, to caption this.
Well, we'll look at the data.
No reason to sell him this week.
I think looking at the table myself, which is split between his stats for game weeks 1 to 4, and then stats for game weeks 5 to 8. What springs out at me is big chances. Is that game weeks 1 to 4, he was getting an average of 2.01 big chances per game. Since then, it's been 0.
Yeah, carry on.
So I think, as you were saying about him being crowded out and he's better in open games, it's very much that he relies on those big chances, and because he's such a good finisher, if he gets the big chances, he'll score them.
Yeah.
But then if he's not getting the big chances, whether that's down to because of combination of teams crowding them out, plus not having Rodri and KDB on the pitch.
Yeah, and a bit of flair in there as well, like Foden or KDB, like to create those chances. Kovacic, like our good friend Mart has, is obviously a good option, but he's not known for his creativity at all. They don't move the ball through the lines as quickly. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the time, without those players, they tend to just get to the box, run out of ideas, go side to side, and essentially send teams asleep defensively by just going left, right, till there's a gap. And again, Vardy's goal was from outside the box. Foden's goal was from a set piece. They're not scoring those fluid open play goals in those games because Wolves have set up camp. Now, Ipswich didn't do that. Ipswich didn't put 10, 11 men behind the ball. And also, because of his early success this season, teams are frightened to absolute death of him because of his form game weeks 1 to 4, like you can see, where he's getting 2 big chances a game. His shots on target are 3.5. Do you know what I mean? The amount of XG he's putting up is massive. And so it's the lesser teams that he's playing are desperate to try and shut him out. And so therefore are man-marking him and trying to keep him out of the game. Ipswich didn't do that because they have a philosophy and a way of playing, and that's just the way they play. Southampton are Ipswich all over again. They are. That we will not go into that game and play any differently against Manchester City as we have just done against Leicester. We won't. And if we do, Russell Martin's the biggest hypocrite going because he's done nothing but turn around and say that we won't do that. So he's not going to... He will obviously set up defensive for him, but defensive for him is not what like Gary O'Neill did with Wolves. He's not going to set 11 men behind the ball and try and keep City out for 90 minutes. No way. We're going to play out from the back. We're going to get caught on a press. Do you know what I mean? We're going to try and break the lines, but not break the lines and give the ball away in midfield, which will in turn, do you know what I mean? We'll push up the pitch, we'll lose it, then they'll counter us. and will try and play City at their own game, and you don't beat City when you play them at your own game. You don't do it. So I expect he's obviously scored tonight as well in the Champions League. So he's got a few goals, so he'll be hungry. Yeah, I get the stats. The stats are fair enough. They can't be argued with. He is in a slump for him.
Yeah.
But again, at the same time, it's the way you view it. He's just had a huge peak and a huge trough. But had he spread those hat tricks out, do you see what I mean? And if the amount of goals that he got, the 9 goals after 8 weeks is still a goal a week. He's obviously got 10, but you know what I mean? If the 4, from game weeks 1 to 4, even if you just take that and then spread it, he's averaging over a goal a week. In fact, I think his stat is a goal a game in the Premier League he's had. So, as much as I appreciate that there's been 4 hits, 3 misses, or 5 hits and 3 misses, that doesn't mean that this is going to continue. If he is currently, after 2 seasons and a bit, on a goal a game, what average are you looking at currently that's saying he's in a slump? Because I get that he is in a slump for him, but he still scored 10 goals after 8 games.
Reading out the stats again from Haaland's comparison, game week 1 to 4 and game week 5 to 8. Non-penalty expected goals, 1.03 the first 4, down to 0.18. Big chances, as we mentioned, down from basically 2 a game to none. Shots on target, as Jack mentioned earlier, 3.51, down now 1.33. Expected assists is slightly higher, possibly due to the lack of creativity across the midfield. Goals 9 down to 1, which Jack mentioned, with no assists at all. So with all that in mind, and pretty sure on what your opinion is on this, Jack, from what you were saying before, a summary of the main things is, in red, the sort of downside of keeping Haaland is that he's got a hat-trick of blanks to go alongside the slightly better 2 hat-tricks he scored earlier in the season. The stats we've just seen show a big drop-off in the recent games. However, the key important bits in green to keep in mind and bear in mind whether you're going to keep him or sell him. Next fixture, Southampton at home. Jack, is that the worst away fixture for your team?
I don't think there's many good ones, but that would be up there. Yeah, definitely.
So
I think obviously what I was saying earlier about Haaland is there are players that you get frustrated with, and there are players that you want to sell, and then there's when to sell them. And Southampton at home is not the time to sell Erling Haaland. He obviously absolutely banged in the Champions League.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? And now he's going into what will be, on paper, his second most easiest game of the season, by the looks of things, with Southampton conceding the second most goals and the second worst XGC. So, like I said, if you're annoyed with Haaland, fair enough. But don't sell him this week. If he blanks this week, you, by rights, have every right to sell him next week. But this week's not the week, if you ask my opinion.
Yeah, and like the big discussion earlier in the season about whether to triple captain Haaland at home to Ipswich. Ipswich, to be fair to them, defensively they've kept games quite tight.
And I see him every week, and I'm telling you, as a Saints fan, you're a maniac if you sell him this week. Absolute maniac.
Well, Mart's not a maniac because he sold him 2 weeks ago. So
he did sell him 2 weeks ago. That's true. And obviously, I said he was a maniac then. I still feel like he's a maniac. But again, hindsight, like we said, you're a genius. Everyone's a genius in hindsight. Blanking in the last few makes it look like a great move. But on paper, especially on paper this week, it's not a good move.
Yeah.
Just quickly with Haaland as well.
Yeah.
He's a rank killer. So you've got to take effective ownership into account. So last weekend, for example, when I looked, his effective ownership was 170%. So if he were to score this weekend and you were to not own him, it would destroy your rank if he goes big. Genuinely. Now, I know you shouldn't make transfers based on fear.
Yeah.
But that is certainly something to take into account with Erling Haaland. Do you see what I mean? The ownership is so big and so astronomical, and he will be highly captained again, that there are weeks that you can back against him. Southampton at home, for me, is probably, well, based on the stats, the second to last time you do that this season. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And as you said earlier, there's no obvious standout fixture. It's by far the best fixture this weekend.
Yeah, it is.
And City, despite their form, since some of their creative players have been absent, they've still got the third highest expected goals, and they're the favourites to score 2.5 plus goals. How you can have 0.5 goals, I'm not quite sure, but the goals this weekend, and Haaland's the run-out favourite to score any time at 71%.
Yeah.
And again, he'll be high on the captain's list once again. So
I'm going to look, Sorry,
even
mate,
if you've got him and you don't captain him, you're going to be therefore hoping he blanks, because otherwise whoever captains him is going to destroy your rank.
Like you said, I mean, I might look stupid again. Do you know what I mean? I've looked stupid the last few weeks saying he's standout captaincy option. I mean, I didn't, but I won't be alone. And if he does blank this weekend, I mean, I'll be amazed. I'll be absolutely amazed. People will be fuming. I think he'll be transferred out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And rightly so. But I won't. I'll stick with him. Because I was thinking about this today.
Yeah.
Because I saw a question about players like Emil Smith-Rowe.
Yeah.
And players aren't going to score every week. Do you know what I mean? Players aren't going to score every week. Your Palmer's not going to score every week. Saka's not going to score every week. I know he's injured, so it's different. But he's not going to. He hasn't scored as much as his price tag. Obviously, he's backed it up with assists. That's fine. Haaland's not going to score every week. Do you know what I mean? No one is going to score 38 goals this season in 38 games, other than Erling Haaland, who may not do it a goal a game, but he will get close to, at the end, what will work out as a goal a game. Do you know what I mean? That
averages out.
No one's going to think I'm an idiot for sort of predicting that either, because he has done it twice. So I just think, just maybe have a little bit of patience with him. I get he's expensive. I get he's had a load of blanks. I get that he doesn't top anything up with assists because he's just a tapping merchant. But just show a bit of patience. If you bail this week and he bangs, it will destroy your rank.
No sympathy. No sympathy.
Yeah,
from anyone
don't do it. Don't do it.
Now, you mentioned that even if he blanks, you'll be keeping him. That brings us on to long-term plans, because another viewer, Mark Crickmay, requested that in relation to the next big fixture swing in game week 12, whether we have got any long-term plans in place, and if any of those are differential related tactics to avoid a template team. How do you respond to that?
I think the wider point on a template team is nobody, apart from Mart, I guess, and managers like Mart, nobody transfers a player in that either hasn't done well and is doing well, or they think is not going to do well coming up, right? So the word template, if you had the 4 highest scoring defenders, the 4 highest scoring midfielders, and the 2 highest scoring attackers, right? you would have a very high rank come the end of the season. Obviously, captaincy comes into it, same amount of limiting players from that team, right?
Yeah.
Somebody would say to you, "Oh, your team's so template," but you'd say, "Yes, it is because they're all high-scoring players." Do you see what I mean? Now, so I don't like the word template. People suggest that you're a boring manager because you have a template team. But your team is template because they're successful in the game, so people are bringing them in. Do you know what I mean? The masses are bringing them in. So I would like to sort of like make that point. But when it comes to game week 12, I've just got my eye on Cole Palmer currently and how I'm going to put him in the team. It was a reason why I brought in Phil Foden. It's a reason why I brought in Son for Saka. I want to try and keep a high value asset in my midfield, so it's an easy switch to Cole Palmer in game week 12. He may come in earlier than that. Do you know what I mean? Spurs fixtures change a little bit before game week 12. But no, again, for me, Palmer. I think other Chelsea players I'd be looking at is maybe Reece James, if he's he'll probably be injured and out for the rest of the season by then, but we'll see. Maybe Sanchez in goal.
2 years ago.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? He'll be out. But yeah, I think, to be honest, right now, because I think it's kind of too far ahead to look. But I would right now. But I have put a price placeholder in for Cole Palmer, and I would suggest people sort of do the same, like gear up for it. If you know that there are high value assets, because I think Newcastle's fixtures change in a couple of weeks' time. So again, I've got Havertz, who I did Isak to Havertz. Do you see what I mean? And I was thinking this week about dropping him down to a budget asset like Visser, which we'll obviously get onto in the next section. But you don't want to take money out of positions that you know that there are players you're going to want over the next few weeks that are going to require 2 transfers to get. Do you see what I mean? Because that's kind of my only long-term plan for game week 12 is to hold money in certain positions that I know I'm going to want.
Yeah.
And then do you see what I mean? And then line up what weeks to make those moves.
Yeah. So
and also try and roll in sort of 9 and 10 would be my other advice. What I might try and do. I try and roll a couple.
Yeah.
Try and roll a couple of times. Try and save up 2 or 3 transfers for game week 12, so you can if there are players that are wild carding around then, which there will be a fair few, you can kind of keep up.
Yeah. So when people refer to long-term plan, how many game weeks would you say is that sort of window for a long-term plan?
5 or 6. I'd probably say. I'd say 5 or 6.
Yeah, because
I don't think you can plan any further ahead than that, and even then, that's hard. It's hard to plan for 5 or 6 weeks
because you're talking into account suspensions coming into play, injuries, form, which we discussed earlier in the longevity challenge, that sort of thing, and it comes into the form view fixtures.
And fantasy Premier League players forget about players. So, for example, Isak was spoken about massively at the beginning of the season, was poor form-wise, fantasy-wise, got transferred out, got injured and got transferred out, but he is now back, and nobody's talking about Isak. But if you do look, their fixtures will change, and they do have, I think, a good run of 3 or 4 fixtures coming up in a couple of game weeks. And you might all of a sudden be able to pick up Isak with a ownership of around sort of 10-15%. Do you see what I mean? So, or even lower than that, yeah.
Yeah, because from a Newcastle point of view, at the start of the season, there were question marks over how much he was involved in the game, so how much chances were being created for him. And he came back against Brighton. At Brighton, he he had some chances which he
Yeah, I
failed to
saw.
take.
Didn't he have? I think I saw today or something that he had like 5 shots in the box
Mm.
this weekend or something
And
like that. Like he had some real good chances this week.
so if if Newcastle managed to maintain actually creating the chances for him like that, once he gets over the injury, once he gets back into match fitness rather than physical fitness,
Mm.
then once they start um, scoring, then it should start flowing. Fingers crossed. Hopefully. Uh,
I
as
think
for
the same goes for players like Visser as well.
mm,
Again, a bit of a forgotten hero. I mean, uh, there are quite a few players that were popular at the beginning of the season that have either been suspended or picked up little niggles that are now coming back from those little niggles and
and are
those
not being
knocks
mentioned.
and are not being spoken about anymore.
Mm,
So they all of a sudden, a Visser will be a differential and Isak will be a differential. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
You go and pick up a player like Nick Jackson, who won't be on anyone's radar over the next couple of weeks. You go and pick
Yeah.
him up. He'll be a differential for a couple of weeks, and then he'll be in a lot of teams in game week 12.
Mm,
Do you see what I mean? Because a lot of players will wild card with the game week 6 and 7 and 8 fixture swings.
yeah.
So a lot that you'll see a lot of template teams over the next 4 weeks. I think
Mm,
you'll see a template start to build, and then
yeah.
anything in game week 12 that's away from that
Mm,
will be a differential in itself. Like you might pick up a Man United player like Rasmus Højlund again. I know Man United are
mm,
what they are at the moment, but they come into some decent fixtures. All of a sudden, Rasmus Højlund and Garnacho and Rashford and maybe Fernandes and stuff
mm,
all of a sudden come into a vein of form. So I would just keep an open mind for game week 12. I wouldn't try and plan anything. I think there are some big fixture swings for a lot of teams.
yeah.
Cole Palmer for me will be essential from game week 12 if he's fit. Maybe a Chelsea defender as well or a goalkeeper. But other than that, maybe Nick Jackson. But yeah, I would try and sort of mark at least 2 or 3 transfers going into it, some money in the bank, some placeholders in your team with some money so you
Mm,
can make easy switches. But other than that, no, those are my current thoughts on a long-term
yeah.
plan for me.
Like for me, it's similar. Been like I've had a lot of fires to burn out this season, which is sort of what my plans have been manipulated slightly because of them. But there are certain players which, at this point in time, I've been hoping to bring in and I've earmarked. And shout out to Fantasy Football Hub and Ben Crellin, who's, if you pay the
Ben Crellin.
subscription there, he's produced a transfer planner which he'll customize for you, and you can download it, insert your team. If you put in the comments, if you want the screenshot, what it looks like, you can do that. Or he's actually got an instructions on how to use it on YouTube. So if you YouTube search Ben Crellin transfer planner, fingers crossed you'll be able to try it and find it. But anyway, there's a little advert for them. But
He's very
yeah,
good,
like
Ben
you said
Crellin.
about with Cole Palmer and fixtures, and this will link to short term as well. He's been earmarked for me around about the game week 12 mark, and the build up towards that has been based on the juggling, like you said, the juggling of the finances. And where it stands at the moment, what's probably changing about my long-term plan that I've had penciled in. So although people say don't plan transfers or don't have transfers penciled in, I think for me that's you're penciling them in rather than penning them in, because if you put them in pencil, you can rub them out. If you put them in pen, it gives the impression you've decided concrete for them.
Yeah, I think there are some weeks where you can be a proactive manager and there are some weeks where you have to be a reactive manager. I think there are some weeks where like you've had to be very reactive so far this season because
Mm.
you've got unlucky with injuries or selection changes. Whereas I've been fortunate enough to be proactive, but at the same time, I did also again get lucky with. I guess there's an element of luck in all of it, and there's an element of thought. Do you know what I mean? But I was able to bank 3 transfers. Do you know what I mean? I was able to react to Isak. I was able to react to João Pedro. I was able to react to the Luis Diaz news when he was dropped before the international break. The Saka injury this week. Do you see what I mean? So the last 2 game weeks, I've had to be reactive, and I just managed to have the transfers to do that because I was able to bank a few in the week before. That's what I would say to people as well, is that if
where possible.
Yeah, bank it where possible, because if there's not an obvious move, especially this week. So this week, people will be actively trying to remove Haaland from their teams because they're sick of him blanking. That is not a move that needs to be done. It's just not. It's not a move. If you've got another player that's injured and you've got 2 free transfers and you want to change the money around, fine. But if you've got 1 free transfer this week, don't remove Haaland from your team. Just let him play Southampton at home and roll the transfer. We've got big fixture swings coming up. We are also, like Matt just said, coming into a season where there's a lot of yellow cards being handed out. The threshold for 5, you used to see it around game week 10. You're seeing it already with players racking up 5.
Yeah, so quite a few on 4.
I've seen it's quite a few on 4, so that's going to have an impact. Do you see what I mean? And so I would just make transfers when you need to, not because you want to. If you do earmark game week 12 for some fixture swings and some changes, wasting the transfer this week on Haaland to somebody else, or what I would call a waste, is unnecessary. Just roll the transfer.
Yeah. So it's basically, in summary, for the long-term plan, is earmark a couple of players that you want, and before that, in advance of that, try to roll the transfers where possible, and make sure you've got players in place at the same
financially, price points,
that you want to bring in.
Yeah, that's a good summary. That's what I reckon.
So moving on from the long-term plan, this looks quite detailed. It's largely just a lot of price changes so far this week. Rises over Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Maddison, Gabriel, Welbeck, Raul Jimenez, Canate, Rico Lewis, Van de Ven, Son, and Burmo. Brennan Johnson, Gvardiol, and Rogers have all seen a rise this week. Drops, there was a massive one Sunday night, down Mateta, Chiesa, Eze, Xerxes, Smodics, João Pedro. How he was still at 5.5 when he started, but then he's obviously gone up and come back down again.
But again, Matt, going back to what we just said, João Pedro will be a differential in a couple of weeks when he comes back from his injury. Do you know what I mean? If he does come back, I don't know what the news is on him, because I sold him, I think, in like game week 4. But give it a couple of weeks and he's back fit again.
Yeah.
It'd be a nice differential to have.
Ugarte, I'm just trying to skim down and say, instead of reading all of them, just ones to note, really.
Yeah, obviously Muniz, Alisson, Luis Diaz, Semenyo went down. Bertrand Diaz has gone from 5.5 all the way down to 5.1. He was an FPL hub. They got that wrong. I had a really good week based on price rises, especially Tuesday night. I've got Son, Mbuemo, Vardio, and Rogers.
Yeah,
so woke up 0.4 million richer on Wednesday morning, and I obviously had Gabriel as well. So 0.5 up for me this week.
For me, Gabriel and Burmo and Rogers. Had I been a bit more proactive, well, not necessarily proactive, but a bit more, in a way, decisive, I could have caught a couple of price rises from what I'd considered for this week. But I mean, looking at Diaz and Semenyo, yes, I've got them, but because for the price jumps, they need to go up 0.2 before you gain a 0.1 in your selling price.
Yeah.
Diaz has dropped twice. The Diaz drop in this week hasn't impacted my selling price for him at all.
No.
Neither has Semenyo, because since I got Semenyo, he's gone up. He's gone up by 0.1, but now he's gone down 0.1. So that's made no difference to the selling price for me.
Yeah.
In addition to those ones, these were the ones forecast for, well, Wednesday night. McNeil went up, and Saka, Dewsbury Hall, Anthony, Bruno Guimaraes, and Areola went down. Where we've got down on the slide, and the slides were made yesterday before last night's rises, and I believe Palmer went up last night. Sells might have done. If not,
I don't think he did.
In which case, looking at those predicted prices, I'd sort of expect Sells, Aït-Nouri, Keane to go up tonight if they didn't last night, and then the others that are on there to go down. Havertz,
You tend to find when it comes to price rises and FPL Hub, I think it's quite interesting as well that you look at that, but also that's the screenshot that you've got. But on the website, if you scroll right from there, you have like a percentage increase and decrease of an hourly rate. Yeah. So you're able to see how fast Havertz is being transferred out, for example. But as a general pattern, you tend to see Wednesday night as a quiet night for transfers, and Thursday night as well to be quite quiet. There's a lot of knee-jerk early on in the week. Do you know what I mean? Everybody goes, "Oh, I hate him," and get him out. Monday and Tuesday, you see big price changes. Wednesday less, Thursday slightly more. Do you see what I mean? It sort of starts Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at plateaus, and then Friday and Saturday because people are making their moves. I've obviously got Havertz, but I've also got Aït-Nouri, so I'm just kind of cool. I think you can't base too much on price changes. I think you need to just take it when it goes well and take it when it doesn't. A bit like VAR, I guess. But I have plans to sell Havertz.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about in a sec. But the fact that he's going to drop in price, I might not make me rush into it, because I think the more, that's corny, isn't it? Knowledge is power, but the more you know, the more press conferences, obviously the later you get during the week, the more information you've got, the better prepared you are to make the right decision.
Yeah.
So for me, looking at that right now, a lot of managers will see that, a lot of Havertz owners will see he's about to go down and just like either transfer him out, because it's obviously, is it Liverpool? I think it's Liverpool.
Yeah. Liverpool at
but he is on my list of potential transfers this week, but I'm not going to rush him out based on the fact that he's going to drop. No, just take the hit.
Yeah,
because there's no point. So he might end up staying. I'm not hell bent on that.
For those of you listening or watching that haven't seen predicted price changes before, basically, where you've got the top ones in this picture in blue, any of them that have got a percentage of over 100%, positive 100%, and a blue, that means they're highly likely to have a price change out. I think it's around about like 2:30 in the morning or something.
Yeah, they're updated at 2:30.
Yeah, and then those that are in red and on a negative, if they get down to negative 100% or lower, it's quite likely that they'd be going down. But as Jack said earlier, although this is the basic screenshot of just the change time and the progress, there is a rate of change if you go on the website and scroll across, because there may be some that are close to 100%, but there's no activity.
Yeah.
Whereas there may be others that are significantly lower percentage-wise.
You'll find that with sales. You'll find that with sales this week. Yeah, you'll find that with sales. You'll find that sales has been progressively being put in teams. Some people would have put him in a wildcard 6 team. Some people would have put him in a wildcard 7 team. Obviously, he did really well on Monday night
There would have been a rush.
So there might be a slight rush to go get him, but that rush probably is slowed down now because not many people are going to be rushing out to go and get Sells and make a goalkeeper change. Do you see what I mean? I would be wary of players like Aït-Nouri and Keane on 90%. I would check their hourly rate. If it's like 0.02, chances are they won't go up. And also, it's not 100% accurate either.
Yeah.
So I did it.
They claim it's about 98 or 99% accurate.
I did it earlier on in the season because Saka was due to rise, I think, or someone like that, maybe Gabriel. And it was during my wild card. And I put him in for somebody and he never went up. And I was a bit annoyed because I wanted to, obviously when you wild card, you take out the players that are likely to drop and put in the players that are likely to rise straight away before you even make any changes. So I was a bit annoyed about that because I think I took out Salah for Saka.
Yeah.
And then, so therefore I'd made that decision that I wasn't having Salah. And so that was annoying. But so it's not 100% accurate.
Yeah. Well, moving on to our current thoughts, about short-term plans, game week 9.
Yeah, you go first, because you were talking about it in the chat, so I was interested in what you were thinking.
Okay, well, I've got one free transfer. My main...
Do you want to go back to your team? Go back through the slides to your teams. We'll talk about it on screen. That'd probably be better.
Scroll back. Menu slide. Yeah, there's mine. So on the bench, which is not on there, is Fabianski, Saka, Pau Torres of Aston Villa in defence, and mine's gone blank who the other defender is now. Fast, Gabriel, Robert. Oh, Collins of Brentford.
Collins. Yeah.
So
your hero from last week.
Yeah, from Gameweek 7. So my main concern about this week is I've got Pau Torres for Villa is playing Bournemouth at home. So I've got the Pau Torres versus Semenyo battle.
Yeah.
I've got Collins of Brentford facing off against Ipswich, Delap. So I've got Collins defence against Delap. There's obviously the Liverpool Arsenal. So for that, at the moment, representation, I've got Raya, Gabriel and Saka against Robertson and Diaz. Which, I mean, that's the thing. I looked at this when I was doing the wild cards in advance, but then there's been other little things that have prevented me making the changes I'd thought to address this week coming up. It's not suddenly been a, oh, whoops moment. So where I'm at in particular is provisionally with my bus team, I've actually got Robertson and Gabriel on the bench playing Collins, Fass and Pau Torres, with the 4 in midfield of Semenyo on the bench, Saka starting with Saka, Rodgers and Burmo and Diaz, with then Watkins, Haaland and Delap up front. But what's crossing my mind at the moment, and with the changes I want to make, with the players I'm not so happy with, is Robertson could be benched, Diaz could be benched. He's had a lot of that lately.
I don't see Robertson being benched. Not for Arsenal. Arsenal.
Then you've got Saka not playing in Europe and now going down to a percentage of 25% likelihood to play. So this is where it's coming back to what I had planned long term about, right, what of those, bearing in mind I've only got one transfer in the bank rather than 3, 4 or 5, thinking, right, well, instead of doing a jump to someone who's got good fixtures for 3 weeks, then jumping onto, your long-term plan being Palmer, I was thinking, do I then just jump straight onto Palmer now? So one thing that's weighing up in my mind was Saka to Parma, because
Yeah.
that's Saka's injury situation against Parma, and he has got Newcastle at Stamford Bridge and Man United after, although that's Old Trafford. But then who knows what
It's Man
United team is
United.
going to
Yeah, I
turn
get
up.
that. Yeah.
So I could do that. The problem is I'm 0.6 mil short, which means I'd need to take a hit to be able to get Palmer in. And the two spots which are vulnerable for that are Robertson and Diaz. Robertson, because he will enable me to drop down to a cheaper defender, and there's quite a few popular cheap defenders out at the moment. The biggest name floating around is being Aitonori of Wolves, who you've already got, or Rico Lewis, who Mart's already got.
Yeah.
Not copying you. These are ones that I have penciled in for weeks.
We just had this conversation about
Yeah.
template. Do you know what I mean? That's what I mean about template.
And so and the alternative for Diaz, that's a bit more questionable who I'd replace, who I'd bring in for him. Because I did think, well, I could do Saka to either Foden or Son, and then that would be a straight swap and I wouldn't need to find funds anywhere else. But then Son didn't travel with Tottenham to the European fixture.
Did you hear Ange's quote about that though?
Yeah, and there were rumours as well that he hasn't been pictured in training, but you can take that with a pinch of salt.
Did you read that he was back in training and that Ange said that he felt a little bit tired after the weekend? He was never going to travel midweek, and that he was back in training today, I think.
So it's but I think bearing in mind Saka's injury and minutes risk do I want to make that risk with the potential of then when Palmer's fixtures turn, would I then go right Son to Palmer?
I wouldn't take a hit this week. This would be what I would say. Obviously, it's your team. Do what you like. Sounds to me like you should gear up and back Liverpool in that fixture if Saka's not going to play. So I would play Robertson. I'd play Luis Diaz. Also, with Arsenal with a few injuries and obviously Saliba suspended, I'd probably back Liverpool in that fixture anyway. I think it's at Anfield, isn't it?
No, it's at the Emirates.
It's at the Emirates. Okay, well, I don't think that necessarily changes anything. I think Calafiori came off with a bit of a knock midweek. Timber's out. There's a chance Zinchenko's going to be playing at left back. So I think they're weak, Arsenal, and I think Liverpool are quite strong. Salah was rested. Arne Slot said that they took Salah off early in their Champions League game with an eye on the weekend. So he'll be fit and ready to go. So for me, I think everything's pointing towards, if you were to make a transfer, be a Saka transfer. And if you were to make a benching, it would be a Gabriel benching over Robertson. Do you see what I mean? Like I'd back Liverpool in that fixture and maybe bench Gabriel. But he has got good goal threat. So again, though, Liverpool have been very good defensively this season. Van Dijk's obviously great in the air. Konate's good in the air. They have got some good defensive players they are very good at defending set pieces. So, and are also quite good at not conceding many of them either. They don't give away many sort of fouls, Liverpool, from what I've seen this season anyway. I mean, I might be totally wrong.
Yeah, so your plans for the week, just a visual reminder of what your sort of bus team's looking like, although it's those players without your bench.
Yeah, I think, again, I'm looking to roll this week probably. I've looked at a few options like Havertz out and Gabriel out maybe, and sort of trying to get off Arsenal with their tough fixtures coming up. You can't see on my bench there, but it's Rodgers, Wout Faes, and who else is there? Another Aitnuri. And the annoyance is I put the Brentford 4 million goalkeeper in on wildcard, thinking that Vissa was going to be out for a while. So I can't get to him without removing my sub goalie, which I'm definitely not going to do. So I was looking at Havertz down to Jimenez. I like Fulham's fixtures coming up. I have got a constant headache every week with Smith Rowe versus Rodgers, and that's sort of been a running theme. I've been having to make that decision every week, and a couple of auto subs early on in the season saved my blushes, getting some of Smith Rowe's points with players obviously not playing. So I'm thinking about spending a bit of money and upgrading that position. But to be honest with you, I don't have much on my radar at the moment, other than maybe Havertz down to a Raul Jimenez. But what we were talking about earlier with regards to keeping money in certain positions, I might do that. But again, I might not. I'm also in the same boat as you. I'm happy with my triple City against Southampton. Happy with Son. Happy with. I've got a couple of selection headaches this week with. I think Everton are playing Fulham, aren't they? So is that right? I think Everton are playing Fulham, and I think Leicester have got Bournemouth. Leicester got Bournemouth. Leicester have got somebody.
Random question. Bearing in mind, and this actually popped into my head earlier, is instead of getting Palmer in so soon, about any transfer I make switching to Greater City this week, so possibly even doing Robertson straight across to Guardiola, because I could actually.
So that's kind of was my thinking looking at your team. Obviously, you've got.
But would you do that for a hit as well as replacing Saka?
I wouldn't take a hit. I wouldn't. I really wouldn't. I think if Saka's out this week, he'll be back for next week. I think he's a good option. I think he's a good hold. I think he holds that price point for you to get Palmer in. This might be totally wrong. If it was me and I was deciding between Robertson and Gabriel, I would remove Gabriel. They've got tough
bench Gabriel.
Well, I'd transfer him out. If you were going to transfer one of Robertson and Gabriel, I think they're the same money. Yeah, obviously, Gabriel's risen a couple of times. If I was choosing between the two, I would transfer out Gabriel.
Yeah, out of my Arsenal triple up, it would only be Saka I'm selling. I'll keep, because of the price changes. Gabriel, I'll just keep and either play or put him on the bench.
That's a lot of money to sit on the bench. I know you were talking about getting rid of Saka this week, but if you were to transfer Saka out this week for Palmer, it's not. You had the conversation about Haaland where there's nobody else with a decent fixture. I think Newcastle on their day, and maybe I'm not giving Chelsea enough credit for the form they've had this season, but I think Newcastle on their day will be a real test defensively. And we've just seen Curtis Jones set the blueprint on how to mark Cole Palmer out the game. And Newcastle definitely have the midfield nous and ability to do exactly the same. And I think Eddie Howe is a tactical genius. I think he's very good tactically, and I think they will be very hard to break down. Newcastle, for me, would not be a fixture I would sort of pinpoint as an entry point for Cole Palmer. Maybe, again, I would say maybe do it over 2 weeks. Maybe make a Gabriel Robertson to a Rico Lewis this week. And then next week for free, do Saka to Palmer when he's got Man United. That for me would be a better way of doing things than just taking the hit this week. But then all of a sudden Saka might be back fit and you've got that quandary then of whether to play him or not. But then all of a sudden you've got money in the bank and you've got options. Whereas if you do it this week and you take a hit, then you've taken a hit. And I just don't like hits. I don't like taking hits. I think with your rank as it is and where it's quite tight up there at the moment, starting on a -4 would be hard to claw back.
Yeah, yeah. It's why I think I've pretty much decided, right, if I'm taking a hit, I'm not going to do it where one of those is a defender. Which is
You could do
why the
Robertson down to
was.
8 Nuri. You could do Robertson down to 8 Nuri, but do
Mm,
you know what I mean? And just bank some money, and then you're sort of flush with options for next week.
mm,
You could do Delap to Vissa this week. I'm not sure how much
mm.
money you got in the bank. If you've got any money in the bank, you could do a
I've,
Jimenez. You could do you don't own Smith Rowe. Fulham have obviously got good fixtures.
it's just,
A Semenyo to a Smith Rowe if you want to remove one of your fixture
mm,
clashes that you've got. There's a
yeah,
lot of options for you in there, and I would
yeah,
explore them all before you just go and take out a big couple of big
yeah.
hitters and take a hit.
That's what I've done. I've looked at, right, which ones can I, which player out of the ones that are head to heads, uh, which which defenders to go with, so that, because it doesn't matter if I've got the attackers play, it'll just be hoping for more of an attacking weekend. Which is why Pau Torres really is bagged one of my bench spots, because then it means I've got the freedom of playing Semenyo without having the pain of last week, Semenyo coming off, and I've got him up against Raya and Gabriel. Where I'm actually hoping Semenyo, one of my more differential players, I'm therefore hoping that he blanks so that Raya and Gabriel got the clean sheet. So at
I
least I
think
bench.
Robertson, yeah, I think Robertson, Wout Fass, and Collins is a decent defence this week.
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? I think that's perfectly reasonable. You could
Collins against
see,
Delap,
yeah. I
or I
mean,
could
but
bench
you
Delap.
could
But
bench
I think
Delap.
really, it's where I'm not sitting
I
is out of
wouldn't.
my three sort of top midfielders of Diaz and Burmo and Saka. One's got a 25% chance of playing. One's been benched and is it in Diaz, and that his replacement is
He was rested midweek.
Gakpo is doing well.
Diaz will start. He was benched in the Champions League, so he'll start. Robertson will start. That all of the players on in your team for me will definitely start. I can't see anybody in that 11 not starting, and on your bench, to be fair, other than maybe Saka, who's obviously injured, and Fabianski, who's just bench fodder anyway. But I don't think you've got many minutes risks there. I don't see Robertson getting benched for Arsenal. I really don't.
Yeah, yeah. It's Robertson wasn't necessarily, I'd be worried about him being benched. It was more a matter of funds and raising the funds for reallocating and redistributing funds towards more my
Mm.
midfield than anywhere else. And I'd rather sacrifice Robertson than Gabriel, really.
What, even with the fixtures coming up, and Arsenal's defence this season being nowhere near as good as Liverpool's? Because I think we all need to sort of have a rethink of how good the Arsenal defence actually is after
Mm,
conceding to Leicester, Southampton, Bournemouth, and a few others earlier on in the season. And
mm,
Liverpool under Arne Slot are kind of defensively going right under the radar. They're very, very good
yeah.
defensively. So I actually think you should view the Liverpool defence of this year how we viewed the Arsenal defence of last year.
Mm,
But both Liverpool and Arsenal have got difficult fixtures over the next two or three. So I would understand your decision to get rid of one or two of them. But I do think you'd be better off. Again, it's just my opinion. I think you'd be better off targeting, and obviously people have this. My advice to people who have conflicting fixtures every week is
yeah.
always back the attackers because they have a higher ceiling.
Yeah.
So always back the attackers.
Mm,
My other thing would be is also not to worry about it too much because it happens and it will happen. Obviously,
mm,
Liverpool Arsenal this week. There's a lot of people with Liverpool assets. There's a lot of people with Arsenal assets. Like they
mm,
will clash eventually. There are also people with Chelsea assets and Liverpool assets who clashed last week. So it's just happens and it's unavoidable. You just need to deal with it when you get there. For me, looking at your team, we've been speaking most of this video about Man City being at home to Southampton. You're light at Man City,
So maybe,
so
so maybe,
either switch to a City midfielder or switch to a City defender would be what I would say, because it's not just this week. They've got decent fixtures over the
yeah.
next couple of weeks. So a Saka
Which,
to a Foden, or
yeah,
a Gabriel to a Vardiol, or a Rico Lewis.
it would it out of those, it would be Saka to Foden. It would be Saka to
He
Foden
did play
because
90 minutes in the Champions League, which I'm a
what
little bit concerned about.
Foden.
Because he hasn't played 90 minutes. I think
Mm,
he did play 90 minutes in the break before the international break. I'm pretty sure he played 90 minutes in the Champions League or a lot of minutes anyway. And then he only
mm,
played 25 or something like that. And then he obviously he obviously was benched at the weekend.
mm.
But they have, yeah, I would maybe think about that. But again, it is Pep Guardiola, and it wouldn't surprise me if he plays him again.
And just the way my luck's gone this season, it'd end up Foden would be benched and Saka would be playing.
Yeah, for me, looking at your team, I would come off Arsenal defence personally. That's what I'm thinking of doing.
Mm,
I've got Gabriel and Havertz because obviously sold Saka for Son last week, and
mm,
I'm thinking of my plans would be the only transfers out I'm thinking of making this week is Gabriel or Havertz. I'm thinking of coming off Arsenal assets for a couple of weeks, but we'll
yeah.
see.
Mm.
We'll
We
see. I'm
will.
sure we'll talk about it over chat a few
Yeah.
more
I mean,
times between now and Saturday.
one final thought, really, before we wrap it up, which we should have done by now anyway, is Arsenal have got Newcastle away, and yes, next game week, so game week 10, which last season I would have said might stay clear of that, but this season Newcastle have scored one goal in like 5 hours of football or something ridiculous, and that was a penalty. So I'd certainly say at the moment that I'm tempted with keeping the Arsenal double up and start both of them at St James's Park. And that's
Yeah,
me as a Newcastle fan saying that because Newcastle are struggling scoring. As long as Arsenal keep 11 men on the field,
yeah,
that I think that would have a good chance of being a 0-0 or a 1-0. Maybe, well, so
an Arsenal win to 0, yeah,
yeah, it might
that's
be.
fair enough.
So
We'll see.
that's why I'll have a think. But yeah, if you've enjoyed this video, if it's been helpful on
Yeah,
Haaland or short-term plans, long-term plans, then that'll be great. Please like and subscribe. Comment on Facebook or on the bottom of this video, just skipping through to the last page with our links. There we are.
yeah. Any comments or questions you've got for the future that you'd like us to discuss on our next video? Yeah, drop a comment. Obviously, a like and subscribe, please. It really helps the channel out.
Yeah, it really does, and stretch the range. And if you enjoy, again, what we're talking about, please share our links with anyone you know that's interested.
Even if you don't like what we're talking about, and even if you think we're talking absolute nonsense, just click the like button anyway, so we can carry on doing it.
Yeah, for comedy value.
Just for comedy value, yeah.
Comedy value and banter, and although he's not been with us tonight,
No,
comedy value and the intrigue of Mart, the apprentice, and any reasoning he comes up with decisions between now and the end of the season.
and all his crazy ideas, yeah. So do stay tuned. We'll be doing weekly episodes, trying to get recording as consistent as we can, but we'll get there. But thanks for watching.
All right, thanks everybody. And all that's left to say is keep your FPL affairs under wraps until after the deadline, which this week, Friday 6:30, not Saturday morning.
Sneaky
Friday,
Friday.
6:30. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye everyone. Thank you for watching.